know the format of our meeting, and there are some new people on the call, and I know many of you are used to how we do this, but it's always helpful to know what to go forward. I also realized that there are many people starting to get vaccinated, and once we get an idea of who's vaccinated, we might try to figure out some ways to do some outdoor meetings so that we can connect instead of being virtual so often. So just note that there's conversation going on about that. We do want to get together. We do want to get back face to face, but we also want to be safe. And we are recording live now, and I'm going to go ahead and change it to speaker view. Yes. All right, and please, let's see, share screen. Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. And you should see it on your screen now. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
United States
of America. Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And again, just a reminder, please mute your mic when you're not speaking. That way the speaker, our guest speakers, will be the more prominent person on the call. The chat is open. You can privately chat with the guest speaker if you have questions that way. If you want to ask questions that way, you can put chat questions to me, or when we come to the Q&A session, you can just unmute and ask your question. So you might be seeing some electronic petitions going around. Those are legitimate. They was started by some Northern Virginia members who wanted to find a way to safely get members who are running for election onto the primary ballot, and the Virginia Democratic Party approved them to do that electronically. Some of those ballots that let you just select all the members that you are willing to sign for, and that's all. You're not saying you're voting for that person, you're just saying they deserve to run for the office, and that's it. Our primary elections are Tuesday, June 8th, and I just want to remind people that if we get an approval of someone on the ballot and there is no challenger for that person, then there won't be a primary, because that person will be our nominee. So just so you know, if in case we come to the primary, you say, oh, I signed for this person, why isn't that person on? It's likely because there was no challenger. Our weekly emails are still going out, and we realize that we're having some difficulties getting those emails to certain email addresses. We are working on it, and hopefully we will have a solution soon. So if you're in Comcast or Embark or Hotmail, I know we're still having some concerns getting our newsletter out, but we are definitely working on it. And with that, I'd like to introduce our first guest speaker, who is Councilwoman Andrea McClellan. Ms. McClellan is a council member and businesswoman in the city of Norfolk. She attended UVA for her undergraduate studies, and she completed a 2-year Wharton management program at the University of Pennsylvania. She was appointed chair of the Virginia Small Business Advisory Board by Governor Mark Warner, and has been recognized as a local hero, a woman of distinction, and a top 40 under 40 because of her unique leadership style. So please welcome Councilmember Andrea McClellan, candidate for the office of Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you, Daniel, and hello, Hanover Democrats. Boy, that top 40 under 40 was a little while ago. I'm about to turn 51, so I tell my age. But thank you for recognizing that. It's fun memory. So yes, I'm Andrea McClellan, and I'm a candidate for Lieutenant Governor. I'm excited to be running because I want to continue the work that we've all done to ensure that there's access to opportunity and that we are breaking down the barriers for all Virginians who are struggling to get ahead. I know what that's like. I was raised by a single mom who juggled multiple jobs to make ends meet. My family moved to Virginia Beach when I was 7 for my dad's job. And unfortunately, a few years after we arrived, my dad left. And my mom, who was one of 8 kids, who had never gone to college before she got married and had never worked outside of the home, found herself in a position where she had to make ends meet for my brother and me. And fortunately, she was able to go back to Tidewater Community College and take a couple of classes, and she became a technical illustrator, in addition to working several jobs at the department store locally in the evenings and on the weekends. She was a great mom who showed resilience and tenacity and taught me a work ethic. I had great teachers in Virginia Beach Public Schools, and I spent a lot of time there because I was a latchkey kid of the 80s and I didn't want to go home to an empty house. Where I got my start in politics, I was student council president at Green Run High School in a graduating class of 850 kids, where I really understood and learned the diversity of Virginia because we had such extraordinary classmates and great friends to this day. Went on to the University of Virginia, as Daniel mentioned, and because of 4 years of work study jobs and Pell Grants and some student loans, was able to graduate and then go work in business. As Daniel mentioned, after working in corporate America for 2 Fortune 500 companies, I was able to go back to Wharton and got bitten by the entrepreneurial bug, and then left to go run 2 small startup companies. The second company was a tech company in 1999 that I started in Northern Virginia. It was great time, great fun. We had angel seed funding of $1 million. And at its height, I had 22 employees, and we were creating websites for cities and counties and towns, sort of like Squarespace, but 21 years ago. And if you recall, in year 2000, the tech bubble burst, and I was out of runway, and none of the venture capital firms were returning my calls. And unfortunately, I had to close down the company, lay off 22 employees, and declare corporate bankruptcy. And as we look around right now in this COVID economy, I'm concerned about all those other companies who are experiencing a similar path right now for different circumstances. But having the understanding and the empathy of what that struggle is like and having to restart again is very important to me. And I think a skill that I bring to the lieutenant governor's role. So being able to focus on access to capital for small business is very important to me. I returned home to Hampton Roads at that time, and I saw too many families struggling as my mom had. And so I decided to get involved in the community, helping organizations that provide services to victims of domestic violence and homeless families and folks who'd recently been incarcerated with reentry. And then I also became a precinct captain. So thank you for all you local Democrats for all you do. In 2008, I became a precinct captain for our Norfolk City Democratic Committee, and I've been organizing and knocking doors and making phone calls for all sorts of candidates at the local, state, and federal level for many, many years. And then in 2016, I decided to run against a 16-year incumbent for the Norfolk City Council. And despite being told by the good old boys in my community to sit down and wait my turn and that I would never raise enough money, I beat him in 19 of 23 precincts, and I now represent 125,000 Virginians, which is actually the largest constituency of any of the lieutenants running right now. On City Council, I've been proud to have worked on expanding access to broadband. I'm the vice chair of our regional broadband ring, where we are working to create more internet competition and lower our prices, focusing on offshore wind and the opportunity with jobs, potentially thousands of jobs coming to our area to help support this clean, renewable energy source. The author of the first climate action plan for our region. I am the co-chair of our Social Equity and Economic Opportunity Commission in Norfolk, where we're focused on affordable housing, healthcare outcomes, youth and education, and jobs. I also am the vice chair of our Hampton Roads Transit, so very much focused on how do we expand public transit and opportunities for more affordable, reliable, and efficient bus service. My granddaddy drove a bus for 40 years in St. Petersburg, Florida, so I'm very proud of that. And I'm really running, again, to ensure access to opportunity for all Virginians, and excited to be here with you today to answer any questions that you may have about my campaign. And thanks so much, Daniel.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for any questions. I know I have a couple in case some people don't have any right off the bat. And I do believe you will also be at the Caroline meeting later on today. Is that true, or is?
I'm going to the Rappahannock Dems and Westmoreland, and I think that's it. So,
all right.
Fortunately, with Zoom, we are able to get all over the place very quickly. So
that is true. All right, I'm going to open up the floor for any questions for Council Member McClellan.
So Daniel, may I ask a question of you all?
Sure.
For others. Among other things, I'm also the chair of our Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, which represents the 1.7 million people of our region. And one of the things that we've been tackling recently has been the issue of vaccine distribution, which has had its fits and starts in Hampton Roads. And I'm always curious as I'm traveling via Zoom around the state, how things are going with vaccine distribution in your community.
Yeah, that's really, I think, a question for our Board of Supervisors. But what I am seeing is that Hanover County partnered with our Chickahominy district and used one of the local businesses that is no longer functioning. We call it the old Food Lion Shopping Center. The Food Lion grocery store had moved to another shopping center in the town of Ashland, and so they're using that as the main building. I know that our local college, Randolph-Macon, has allowed for people to come in there. And from what I can tell, it's speeding up with the Biden administration, and people seem to be on the same path now going forward, that much more quickly people are starting to get the calls to be vaccinated.
Good.
But again, I can't speak for everyone. I'm not a supervisor. I'm not actually in the know. I just can only speak from what I hear and what I'm seeing.
The challenge has been that our local public health districts don't report to the supervisors or to the city council, but to the state. And so we've had that coordination of the local effort has been a little bit of a challenge initially. It's gotten better. We sent a letter to the governor in mid-January, and we now have a task force of local chief administrative officers who are working with the governor's staff on a weekly basis. So trying to provide that local perspective. And as a matter of fact, of all the candidates running, I'm the only candidate with local government experience. And I would, the last person to have that expertise in the role of lieutenant governor was Tim Kaine, who came from city council in Richmond and mayor of Richmond. And I think having that connection of how things work at the local levels is certainly a benefit and something that I look forward to putting into effect as lieutenant governor.
Excellent.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
This is Mark Sproul, and I frankly am not that well acquainted with the office of Lieutenant Governor, and was wondering if you could tell me about it, what attracts you to that office, and if anything, what you might do differently from the current person who holds that office.
A lot of people don't know what the lieutenant governor does, so it's a great question. It's akin to some extent to the vice presidential role, except that it's part-time. So the lieutenant governor presides over the Senate. It breaks ties in the Senate. So certainly as you're considering candidates, you need to feel comfortable that the candidate's going to break the ties and follow good democratic values. And I can assure you that I'm a lifelong Democrat. I've been very active in the party here. Also was vice chair of the state Democratic Party for finance in 2014 and 2015. Outside of that role, though, you've got 10 months of the year where it's a statewide platform. And the role has some statutory elements where you sit on a variety of boards, the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, the Virginia Tourism Authority. It is, as I mentioned, considered a part-time job. I'm very fortunate to be in a position to make it a full-time job, which I would. And I'd like to use that platform to address some issues, depending on whomever the governor is, whomever she or he is. You're sort of the wingman to the governor. I'd love to focus, number one, first and foremost, on broadband access. I think that that is an issue of equity, and the digital divide that we have had in our country and in our Commonwealth has now become a chasm. I've seen it firsthand in our community in Hampton Roads, both rural areas, as well as urban and suburban areas. Either there's not access because it's unserved, or because in the case of Norfolk, where 25% of our homes don't have access to high-speed internet because it's not affordable. I think we as a Commonwealth need to consider this a moonshot and strive to become the most connected state in the country. So I'd like to focus on that. I would also very much want to focus on environmental issues, which I've been focused on here in Hampton Roads, both climate change mitigation as well as adaptation. Flooding is a huge issue for us in the Norfolk area, but flooding is becoming an issue statewide because of the precipitation events that we're seeing as a result of climate change. Rain bombs that are happening in Danville and in Stanton and Roanoke, in Alexandria and Chesterfield. So I think we need to be addressing that. And I'd love to see a Commonwealth Flood Board and like to lead that effort. I'd like to focus on workforce development and small businesses because of my background. And then lastly, on civic engagement. I'd love to be the Chief Engagement Officer for the Commonwealth, working with the Secretary of the Commonwealth to continue to expand what we do in terms of public service in the state. That's what I've been doing here in Norfolk, and I'd love to do it statewide. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Councilmember McClellan, I want to get back to your broadband thing. As most people on the call know, I've been pushing for this since, I don't know, not only I, but many people in our committee have been pushing for it. Can you talk a little bit about what you were able to do with the broadband expansion and the ring that your group is creating, and what the state could do going forward to help localities build their own municipal rings?
So number one, what we're doing locally is we have 3 phases. Our first phase, the 5 cities of Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Suffolk, and Portsmouth, so about 1 million people in population. We are collectively putting our infrastructure dollars into creating a 110-mile highway, if you will. We're connecting our municipally owned fiber that we'll use for our own city buildings and county buildings. But then we've created an authority that will market the excess capacity of that ring to other internet service providers and other economic development business opportunities, whether it's advanced manufacturing or financial tech, et cetera, healthcare. So if you think of a cable having 288 strands of fiber, as a municipality, we probably need about 12, maybe 15. That's a lot of excess capacity. So we will market out that with the goal of bringing in more competition through. And by the way, that highway will connect to the subsea cables coming into Virginia Beach, which have the fastest internet speeds of anything on the East Coast. That's a middle mile play. It's not going to be providing access to the last mile, or what I like to call the first mile, to the homes. But Daniel, to your point, right now, the Commonwealth doesn't, it makes it very difficult for municipalities to provide broadband. And I would like to see some of those laws changed and adapted because, listen, broadband, high-speed internet is now a utility. It is not an amenity, and we have to start addressing it as such. The other thing that I would say is that we're supporting with what they call the body grants, only middle mile services, right? Only getting it to the community, but not to the doors. So for folks like Wise County, the southwesternmost portion of the Commonwealth, they are doing a pilot program using Starlink, which is Elon Musk's new satellite technology that has 100 Mbps down and 20 Mbps up. All that means, for those who don't know, that those numbers mean it's high-speed internet, but through satellite. There is no middle mile with satellite. Space is the middle mile. And right now, the body grants don't support that. So I think that we need to reconsider how we're providing resources to communities as well. I would put together a task force that includes federal resources, academia, nonprofit, research institutions, et cetera, to try and address this, similar to what Maine has been doing right now. Sorry, that got really in the weeds.
Oh, excellent. And I just want to make sure people realize this. The cable lines she's talking about, referring to Virginia Beach and Norfolk, these are transatlantic cable lines that are coming from Europe to the United States, and the information coming through those lines in just one line alone has more capacity than all of New York City. So just to make sure people realize, it's huge that Norfolk's taking a lead on this and investing in it. And so I'm actually really proud to know that there are people that are in the know and working really hard towards improvement.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. The floor is still open. I saw some comments. I know some people said, "You're wonderful." I don't know if anybody wants to chime, I don't want to call out names, but and then someone else saying, glad to hear that you're talking about broadband as a utility. And I know there are other things that people may be concerned with. So the floor is open. We still have some time to answer some questions.
I have a question. Hello, Mr. McClellan. My question is to you, what are your thoughts and your views on voter suppression? I know ever since the election a few months ago, the presidential election, there have been, numerous states that kind of roll back laws and rules on how voters are able to get to the polls and actually stand in line and vote and stuff like that. What are your views there?
Well, again, thank you. Great question. For me, my whole campaign is a theme of access. And so access to voting is absolutely first and foremost. The General Assembly just passed some great laws around that, both last year and the special session as well as this year. So Virginia's leading in that area. We were a laggard for many, many years, but we have now jumped to, the top 10, I think, in the country in terms of providing access to voting. I'd love to see us also consider in the future vote by mail options, which we don't currently provide outside of the no excuse absentee ballot, where you have to request a ballot. By the way, Daniel pointed out that the primary that I'm running in and others is June 8th, but early voting starts April 24th. So it's right around the corner, folks. So please pay attention to that. I support the move that the governor just signed into effect of making May municipal elections move to November. Listen, our elections in Norfolk have been in May, and there are pros to that, and there are also cons to that. And at the end of the day, getting more people out to the polls ultimately is the right thing to do. So I'm pleased with that. All of that said, for some of the things like the early voting, same-day voter registration, providing drop boxes, all of those things are absolutely exactly what we need to be doing. However, when we make those changes at the state level, sometimes those are unfunded mandates. And for somebody who works at the local level, our local voter registrar's office then has to put that into effect. And that's manpower, and that manpower costs money. And a lot of times we don't have that in our budget. So when we make those changes at the state level, I think we also need to provide funds to help support it too. Again, that's where that local background, having that understanding to ensure those unfunded mandates are minimized and mitigated will be very important. But great question. Thank you.
I have a question. This is Rita. You mentioned homelessness, and you actually mentioned your own experience with your mom being a single parent. So I've seen in the city of Richmond a lot of homeless issues. So what are your plans or thoughts about addressing those? Because it's a very complex and difficult issue to tackle.
It is. And I appreciate you noting that, because a lot of times you have to look at what's the root cause of the homelessness to really effectively address it. Certainly we want to provide rapid rehousing when we can, but sometimes it's an issue of their mental health issues. There are addiction issues. It might just be an eviction issue with the current economy that we have right now. So all of those need to be addressed. A lot of times it's a poverty issue as well. One of the challenges that we see locally is that a lot of our homeless shelters won't allow people who have addiction or mental health issues. And so those are the folks who end up on the streets most frequently. And so providing shelters that actually accommodate that and provide those wraparound services is going to be important. And I think we need, as a government, to be working with our faith community and working with the nonprofit folks who are already doing that to provide the services and have a coordinated care mechanism. I don't know that it's completely the role of government to do all of that, but to help and to provide to connect the dots as well, because there are a lot of folks doing amazing things there for sure. I am worried about the eviction rates that we have, including in communities like Norfolk. We just received a $560,000 grant from the state where we're doing trying to do some effective mitigation in advance of people getting to that situation of homelessness, working with both renters as well as with the landlords to provide more education and services, whether it's workforce development, it's transportation, it's childcare issues. We could talk about childcare. That's another whole issue as well. So it is complex. I touched on a little bit of that, but hopefully that gives you some flavor of what I'd like to do.
Thank you.
Hey, Daniel, I apologize, but I'm going to need to jump because I've got to get to my my next meeting. I hope I've given some background here. I wanted to point out that Cami is here from the A-Team. We call it the A-Team. And we'd love to have you join us. We certainly need volunteers. We would love to have your vote and would love to have your support. And if you have further questions, please feel free to reach out to us. I'm Andrea at A4VA. I'll put my email in the chat if you'd like to reach out directly. But thank you for the opportunity. And it was great to be here with you guys today. Please stay safe and be well.
Thank you, Councilmember McClellan. I appreciate your time and good luck in the elections.
Thank you.
All right, our next speaker will be Delegate Saul. I'm not sure if the delegate's on just yet.
Good morning.
Oh, excellent. Let me, would you like for me to introduce you briefly?
Thank you.
Hold on, let me pull up my intro. Good. Thanks for making it. And can I get your name? Can you just state your name real quick? Because I don't want to say it wrong.
Sam Rasul, but in Southwest Virginia, they can call me Sammy Russell or whatever works on our side of the state. So whatever makes you feel good, we're good to go.
Excellent. So Mr. Rasul is a delegate for the state of Virginia. He grew up in the Roanoke Valley after his family left Palestine to settle in Virginia. He earned his bachelor's degree from Roanoke College. I must add, that's where my daughter's attending right now.
All right.
And his master's in Hawaii. In 2008, he was the youngest person to run for the U.S. Congress. And in 2014, he was elected to the Virginia House of Delegates, representing the people of Roanoke. Please welcome Delegate Rasul, candidate for the office of Lieutenant Governor. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning, Hanover Democrats. It is great to be with you. I make that joke because my parents are of Middle Eastern descent, so I'm Arab American, and I was down in a stop in Southwest Virginia, and down there's a county called Russell County, and a woman came up to me after my speech, and she's like, "Man, oh man, I really like what you had to say. I can't wait to support you. And I think I might know your cousins because I know a bunch of Russells." And I said, "Yeah, okay, maybe deep in the tree somewhere." But it is great to be with Hanover Democrats. I see so many familiar faces, and Stan's shiny head there going on. Good to see you, buddy. Yeah, you're ready to go. And Morgan and so many other folks. It is great to be with you. Delegate Sam Rasul, I'm in my 8th year in the General Assembly. I've loved being able to serve as a child of immigrants, growing up in a working class family out here in the western side of the state. It's all about building coalitions. And I know in Hanover, you all feel that as well, wanting to figure out how can we make some progress and continue to head in the right direction. And those coalitions were always important in building for policy and in politics. On the policy front, been able to pass just in the past year, integrate socio-emotional learning into our K-12 standards, expand who can administer vaccines, pushing for health equity by bringing a nursing program to rural Virginia, passing the Safe Drinking Water Act, and then forging forward with intersectional justice as we think about environmental, social, and economic justice at its intersection is critically important to build those coalitions. As a member of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus and a member of the Virginia Legislative Rural Caucus, I will tell you one thing that brings us together is equity, and that push for equity in all parts of Virginia, whether it be in the inner city or out in the rural parts for sure. And it's important for us to lean into those values that make us who we are and that make us Democrats. We've built a whole campaign around those values. My wife and I raise our 3 children with always tell the truth, always be kind, and never give up. And that truth, love, and grit is how we've structured our whole campaign. First, by developing a people's platform, crowdsourcing ideas, which has led us to a couple of policy launches around the Marshall Plan for moms here in Virginia, because we know women have been disproportionately impacted economically during this downturn. And then our plan that we released this week for older Virginians to be able to protect them in so many different ways with regards to prescription drugs, and really the freedom to be able to live the way we want to, with my background being in geriatric healthcare. But the second value, the love, is how we operate our field program. We actually call people up and ask them if they're having problems with government services and try to connect them with the help they need, especially during this difficult time in COVID. And lastly, through what we call GRIT, Virginia GRIT, I'm visiting every city and county in person in a safe way in Virginia. Today I'm in Northern Virginia, but I've been in Hampton Roads, on the Eastern Shore. I've been from tip to tip in Accomack to Lee County, about 10 hours, and a bunch of places in between, all while wanting to be the first candidate ever elected in Virginia history, running statewide, to be 100% funded by individuals only. And we've gotten great support from state senators on down to school board members there in Central Virginia. And we've also gotten endorsements from the United Rural Democrats nationally and the Sunrise Movement as well. Look, what I've learned in my 4 terms in the General Assembly is it's not enough to be right. You got to bring people along. And there's a great quote by Ruth Bader Ginsburg that says, "Fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that leads others to join you." So I'd love to join you in elevating your voice, pushing for the things that you care about, and I'd be honored to be able to do that as your next Lieutenant Governor. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Delegate Rasool. I'm going to open up the floor for any questions for the delegate. And while you're thinking of questions, I just want to recognize that we have candidate Rachel Levy on the call. We have candidate Sarah Sams on the call. We have our Hanover Board of Elections officer, Luzari, and our Ashland Town Council member, John Hodges. So I just wanted to recognize them, participating. Any questions for Delegate Rasool, please unmute and ask away. All right, I'll start since it's kind of quiet. It's okay. Hold the question just for a second. I want to talk about the equity question that I see. And I bring this up as a teacher because we're often told as teachers we need to be diverse. We need to recognize the value in diversity and how it strengthens us as a society. However, every time they show us examples of good education, it's always in a homogenous group. And I'm not talking about just color or I'm saying in general, the socioeconomic background of the people they give us to look at, they're typically homogenous. So I'm curious how you break that barrier where we start looking at actual diverse groups and seeing their successes.
Yeah, so there's a couple of components to your question. What a great question. And one project that I've set out to do as a delegate is to substitute teach in every school in my district. And I've been to half the schools, and I will tell you, God bless our teachers, the struggles that we go through and the challenges that the students bring with them to class. Certainly, it really makes us scratch our heads to figure out why are we so far below the national average in how we compensate our teachers. But to the question of equity and how we approach it, from a values perspective, let's just think about it constitutionally for a moment. There is the perspective of diversity and inclusion, but I think put that aside for just a moment and think about what we should be defining as equity, which is that every student should have the ability to be able to have an equal opportunity to succeed. And that opportunity to succeed means we might need to be putting more dollars in some school districts and others. It doesn't mean the equal distribution. It means that there's an equity portion that needs to be factored in. And so what's important to Daniel's question is how we understand those nuances and invest accordingly to them to ensure that we understand when you've got generations of poverty in a certain spot, it will take a different approach where we go into these school districts. So for example, my school district, I have one of the poorest districts in Virginia. We have 86% free reduced lunch, very high Medicaid utilization rate. And it's not about offering up information or additional resources to the parents. Many of the parents don't know what they don't know. And we have to dig down deep into those communities. And so oftentimes that lens is forgotten. When I was working in East Africa doing a nonprofit healthcare work, it wasn't about providing services to people. It was, we literally had to go and pay people to help them. And I know that sounds crazy to some folks, but they don't know that they need some help. And it takes that extra investment to be able to go deeper into these communities and say, hey, let me show you the value in the help that you can be getting, even before we talk about actually delivering that help. I see it in Roanoke City. I saw it in Danville. I see it in Lee County, and definitely in Northampton. And I'm sure you have some of those same struggles in Hanover. So when we're thinking about equity, what gets frustrating for me is that's a nice buzzword, but I don't think we truly appreciate how deep we need to go sometimes. Great question.
Thanks. I think there was somebody who wanted to ask a question while I was asking. So I can't remember who that was. If that person wants to unmute now and ask.
This is Mark Sproul again. To the previous candidate who spoke to us, I sort of posed this question about the duties of the office of Lieutenant Governor, and she answered that, and I was kind of surprised there was a part-time office and this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And she talked about it as a platform to raise issues. And my question to you would be: you certainly have ticked off some good issues that are very important for our state, and I'm wondering how you might use that office in a productive way. I mean, it's one thing to say I'm the lieutenant governor and to stand before a microphone and tick off your issues and things like that. But how would you use it in a way to really get momentum toward laws being voted and this sort of thing?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And in my 8 years in legislature, really seeing how both chambers work and having a lot of great relationships, even on both sides of the aisle, I've thought a lot about this. And so beyond, elevating issues that are important to me, and of course, the constitutional responsibility of being able to cast those critically important tie-breaking votes, working with the incoming governor, whoever she or he may be, to try to be a great supplement. So for example, my background in healthcare administration, my passion for holistic child development and education, the regional perspective, just being, from a understanding kind of rural Virginia a little bit better, or just having that perspective to be able to supplement some of the work that they want to do, or my passionate plans around the environment. Working with that incoming governor is critically important. And then working with members of the legislature to really advance some of these policies. But one big thing that I do want to mention to you is the party building. So there's the body of knowledge of what is wrong, these policies that we see need to be changed. And then there's the body of knowledge of how to fix them. And actually, they're two different bodies of knowledge. Oftentimes we kind of get lost in the kind of conversation about, how are we going to fix all of these issues? But the really, how we fix them is in the political organizing. And so what I'd love to be doing is doing a lot of party building. 4 years ago, we developed the Impact Center, which has helped train over 2,000 candidates, activists, and organizers, especially in places that maybe didn't get so much love from the party. And we need to dig down deeper in that statewide. We've challenged the way we approach a field campaign through Democratic Promise and really trying to build goodwill in the off season. So what I have fundamentally learned in these 8 years is that new and better policies are great, but to me, it's about 10% of the conversation. The political organizing, the winning over hearts and minds, the digging down deep into these communities, that's the real party building that has got to happen, and it begins at the local committee level. And we, hopefully as your next lieutenant governor and the state party, needs to invest deeper down into that. And I think while the lieutenant governor is part-time legislatively, how I would be filling in that full-time role is doing as much party building as we can. I certainly have done that for many, many years as a delegate, and love to be able to scale that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Delegate. I want to open up the floor for any other questions. And okay, there we go. Yes, Sweeta.
So you mentioned environmental issues that you're passionate about. Could you tell a little bit more on what your plans are, what your thoughts are on addressing some of the issues that we're going to be facing or we're already facing?
Yeah, I think that the climate crisis needs to be addressed with the fierce urgency of now, but we've got to be able to approach it in an intersectional way. For example, for all 8 sessions, I have watched environmentalists come to the General Assembly. I've watched social justice advocates, economic justice advocates through our unions and others. And they so many times are advocating in their silos. And I'm just here to tell you that if you're in one of those silos, you are not in a pool that is big enough. You are not going to move the needle that needs to be moved individually. You have got to be able to build broad coalitions. And so the environmental justice through that I believe, where we shouldn't be looking at 2050, but 2035, 2036, where we get to 100%, where we immediately, especially with the trifecta, why do we not have an immediate moratorium on new fossil fuel infrastructure is puzzling to me. And the only way to be able to approach that is for us to build these coalitions and to say, you know what, we need to invest in these renewables quite heavily in such a way that intentionally uplifts communities economically that need us the most. So it's an economic plan and doing it in a socially just way. That way, just like when we fought against the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and Mountain Valley Pipeline, quite frankly, when leadership from our own party was not interested in, and quite frankly is still not very interested in fighting these fights, we had to band together and find people who were, the NAACP, the Sierra Club, finding some of these folks who were worried about just the enormous amount of wealth. I mean, get this, even the Tea Party was against the pipelines, and we couldn't get some of our own folks to stand up and go against these injustices. But we stopped the Atlantic Coast Pipeline by building that coalition. And the tides are turning now. People are realizing, let's make sure we're on the right side of history. So to achieve the real progress on environmental justice that I'm very passionate about, that I've been fighting for a long time, I know we've got to be able to do that together.
Thank you, Delegate. I appreciate your time. I want to get through some of our other candidates because they're running campaigns. I want to give them a few minutes. But I do want to open up for you to stay after if you have time. After 11, I'll stop recording. If you don't have time, no pressure. But I want to give you the final minute, and then I want to open up so that some people can give us updates.
Well, I just want to thank you all, Hanover Democrats, for all that you're doing, even in some tougher places. Having run for office since 2008, I know that there's a good and righteous fight to be had for sure. So I really appreciate you all. I would love to be able to have your support in all of it. We've got a couple of team members who are on this call who are placing some information in the chat. With 42, 43 days left before early vote, it'd be an honor to be able to have your support. So thank you so much for having me this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I enjoyed your talk. You're making it more difficult for all of us, which is a good thing.
That's what we want.
Good.
Thank you. Appreciate you all.
You're welcome. All right, so I want to see if there's any campaign updates that any of our candidates would like to give.
Do you want me to go, Daniel?
That's fine. Yeah, can you just give us a brief update on what's going on with your campaign?
Sure thing. All right, well, good morning. In case you don't know who I am, I'm Rachel Levy, candidate for delegate here in the 55th District. I am a teacher, community leader, and parent. Also want to say good morning to Sam and Andrea. Yes, lots of good choices. So I live in the town of Ashland with my husband and 3 children. I want to thank everyone who so far has donated, volunteered, given me advice, and signed the petition to get on the ballot. Yesterday, I submitted those petitions and filed my declaration of candidacy, and soon I will be officially filed. And on Sunday, March 28th at 3 p.m., we will be hosting the Rachel Levy for Delegate virtual campaign launch. My campaign manager, Ashley Hall, will put a link to that in the chat. In the meantime, just briefly, I'm running for strong and equitable education system, access to healthcare, preserving our environment, and economic justice. I believe that Virginia's 55th district deserves independent-minded, principled, service-oriented, and competent representation. And I believe that the people of the 55th district deserve to be treated fairly and with respect, no matter who you are, what your background is, who you love, or how you vote. You deserve to be heard, you deserve respect, and you deserve a representative who shows up and who works hard for you. And I love to hear from voters. So Ashley will include my email in the chat with any issues or thoughts you might have. As for strategy, it's turnout, and turnout. We're working on that right now. We are going to get every person who could, would, should, or might vote for me registered, motivated, and mobilized. And this campaign isn't just about me or my candidacy. This is about we. This is about us. This is about strengthening our party and strengthening our community in the long run. It's about helping people and making people's lives better. And the more research we've been doing on Democratic turnout this year in other districts like ours, the more we realize that we do have a chance of winning. So more donations would allow our campaign to get earlier access to the van, the voter activation network that gives us addresses and phone numbers. Because if turnout is the name of the game, the more funding we have, the more voters we can reach. So Ashley's also going to put our most recent fundraising campaign link in the chat. And if you would like to donate, we would love to have as many Make It Monthlies as we can, so that I can be knocking doors with every free second I have from now until the election. And Ashley's going to talk to you about some volunteering opportunities directly related to our strategy. So thank you so much again, and nice to see everyone.
Hi, everybody. Very quickly, I'm going to do it right now. I am going to put our volunteer Google form in the chat. This is just so I can start getting people's information and to get what they are interested in doing. We have so many activities that I'm excited about. We're going to have text banking. We're going to have, of course, canvassing, but we're going to have lit drops. So there's something for everybody depending on what you would like to do. And I am very respectful of people's schedules and what they are interested in. So if people could just click on the Google form and tell me what they're interested in volunteering wise, that'll really help me in the long run as we get the campaign going. And thank you very much for everybody's time.
Thank you. Ms. Sams, did you want to give an update?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sarah Sams. I see there's a lot more people here than last time. I'm running for the 97th district, which is Hanover, King William, and New Kent County. I've lived in Mechanicsville for almost my entire life, so that's pretty cool. Essentially, what I would like to do if I should win is kind of bring open communication that you don't usually see with the current delegate for the 97th. I know I'll probably be there for a year and then they'll redistrict it, but I'd still like to kind of make this portal so that it's easier and more simplified for people to say, here's what I actually want you to do. Hanover, according to ActiVote, which you should all sign up for, is currently 37.5% Democrat, which is more than I thought it was previously. They use, I believe they use VAN to determine that. So what I'm aiming to do is try and outreach all of those Democrats that are starting to move in and essentially make them aware that I am running and I'm here and I'm ready to listen. With all of the stuff that happened in January, as y'all definitely are aware, we have seen some flip among the milder Republicans, and I'm hoping to catch their attention as well. So far, we've got the website domain purchased. We're still developing the guts of it. I have the Facebook page, which I'm going to put in the chat. And on that first post there are my Act Blue and my petition for signatures. If y'all don't mind signing that for me, I'm sending out thank you cards to everybody who signs that. If anyone has any policy stuff that they'd like me to know about, my email is going to be in the chat as well. My dog is starting to freak out, so I'm going to mute myself, but if anyone has any questions or anything, I'm always available.
Thank you, Sarah Sams. I appreciate it. Please reach out, guys. Even $5 for our candidates will help. You'd be amazed that if everyone who is a liberal in our community donated $5 to each of our candidates in the 97th and 55th. I think that would be enough to launch a tremendous campaign effort. So please consider it. All right, moving on. We have Women's Coffee, Diane Neergaard.
Hi, everybody. Our next coffee is this coming Thursday at 7 o'clock. That is March the 18th. Sarah's going to be with us to talk some more to us. And I hope that everyone, all the women here can be with us. I'll be sending out a reminder in a day or two with the contact information for that. So if you'd like to be on our mailing list, please put your name in the chat if you're not already on our Women's Coffee. And this is a very informal organization. It is an organization so that women can get together and bond together so we can work better with to help our democratic causes. So please give me your information or a phone number. If you're not already on the list, then I'll add it and send you the invitation reminder. Thank you.
Thank you. And our Men's Forum, Don Barth.
Men's Forum is always the fourth Wednesday of every month. This month is March 24th, and our guest speakers will be Rachel Levy and Sarah Sams, both delegates for the... Are you unmuted? I am unmuted. Both delegates for our 55th and 97th. So again, it's the 25th, 24th at 7 o'clock. Thanks.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate it. I do not have a list of any new members applying, but I do think that there were some applications. I just don't have them ready right now. So I'm not going to ask for a vote on any new members. But I do want to know if there's any new business that needs to come before us.
Daniel, can I give a shout out?
Yes, you can.
To everyone who signed the petition for denial of the rezoning application for Hickory Grove. We had over 400 people on the petition, and that was presented to the Board of Supervisors last Wednesday. And based on Bucky Stanley's motion to deny, it was unanimously denied. So thank you all. And if you haven't before, please, if you're on Facebook, look up the Coalition for Hanover's Future. There are going to be more hot topics. And we need to be able to spread the word out. Join us, and we'll help to keep you informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. You might want to put that link also in the chat just in case people are on the call and haven't gone there. I see it now.
It's Facebook.
There you go. Rachel put out the Facebook link, so it's good.
Thanks, Rachel.
It's okay. Not everyone's on Facebook yet, and I think it's still open to the public anyway. So you don't necessarily have to have a Facebook account in order to see.
Well, that's actually our website.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, there you go. That's good. Any other new business? Not seeing any. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.